Frédéric is doing his master's degree in supervision on modules. Initially, he started working on termite scheme and how it can be improved and sort of the problems that are involved in the termite scheme. And what that led us actually to modules, because the fundamental problem that we have in the termite scheme was related to the module system. So this is sort of a dual presentation that we'll talk a bit about termite scheme, but also about the module system that comes out of our exploration of termite.
Okay. So today I'm going to talk about Gambit module, as Mark said. So let's start with what our motivation were is code sharing between different users, code distribution, and also compiling and loading compiled code on the fly to know the distributed system, such as a termite. So, as Mark said, termite. I worked on termite, and it's divided to modules. So, what is termite? Termite scheme was created by Guillaume Germain. This is a distributed programming language in Gambit. It was inspired by the Erlang programming language. You all know that in Gambit, most objects are serializable, including procedure continuation. So, in termite, the thing is to transmit module. To do this correct operation, module needs to have a globally unique name, which will be represented with a module ref. And I will say the structure of module ref later in the presentation. So, a modular approach. What is a module first? A special definition. You all know what is module. So module is a component of the system composed of variable, procedure, and macro. Really simple. In scheme, there are different kind of module in history. There are the old-fashioned modules, the primitive modules, which was implemented recently in Gambit, and the RSet compatible modules. So, the old-fashioned modules. The old-fashioned module is simply a file containing the code of the module. For example, you have an example of hello module which implements the I procedure, and also a main program which called the hello module. In this example, there is a different flaw. The first load doesn't take care of multiple load. If in this program you have multiple load of the module hello, it will cause code duplication. And also, it requires knowing its location on the file system, which is inconvenient. It's under the code sharing among program and user. And the third is the global environment is polluted with all definition inside the module. This means if in the main program I have the procedure I, it can be overwritten by the module or vice versa. And then after we have the primitive module that try to solve most problems. The primitive module, where there are many special forms used inside the primitive module. They are the import. The import is used to import module, and it doesn't require the location on the file system to find the module because it's used a search algorithm. There also the supply module, which display how the module is stored in a structure where all modules are, which is a cache of the loaded module, which is the registered module. I can show it in a demo the future demo after at the demo at the end. There's the demand module, which is the special form that actually tells the dependency of the current module to the module specified by module ref. And the final form is the namespace. The namespace is the form that allows renaming the symbol in the module and put it in a specific namespace. The import solves the problem of multiple import, of multiple load, because multiple import of the same module will result in only one load. The use of namespace also remove the pollution of the global environment, because it allows putting all the definition of a module inside a specific namespace. This includes internal procedure. So let's have an example of a module or a namespace first. This is the syntax of namespace. You can specify a global namespace that will apply to all the file. The first declaration statement namespace tells that every symbol after this declaration will be prefixed with rename to food, sharp, and the name of the symbol. If you only want a specific set of symbols to be renamed, you can specify those after the namespace. For this case, we tell Gambit to put A and B into the X sharp namespace. So a reference to B will be equivalent to a reference to X sharp, and a reference to A will be a reference to X sharp A. There's also the possibility to rename an old symbol to a new one. In this case, we tell the interpreter or the compiler to translate this reference to new inside the namespace X sharp. This is how namespace work in Gambit. Yes?
All here inside the namespace X sharp too, or not inside the...
This means in the code, when you write explicitly old, it will be renamed to this. But if you write, you can actually write X sharp old, but that won't be renamed because
it's already in a new namespace.
This is a namespace. And you cannot take something that is a fully qualified name, because this name, X sharp new, is fully qualified, so it won't be renamed. X sharp old won't be renamed either.
Can you rename a namespace?
Rename a namespace, you cannot rename the namespace itself.
Okay.
So this name is actually for the life of the program and actually the library.
You just have to change it. If you
Manually.
want X sharp to be Y sharp, then you just write Y.
Yes.
Yeah, well,
There's not a space for namespaces. Is that your question?
yes,
Okay.
And
there are systems that do have.
the important part of the namespace is it must end with sharp. This is the only restriction. It can be any string you want. It can be hello world with a space between that ends with a sharp. It will rename every symbol with hello world inside it. Because this latest scheme standard support space in two symbol, it will work. And actually, did it work before?
I don't know what you're saying. So.
Having space into a symbol resulting with namespace.
Yes, so you can put whatever you want. in the string. In fact, that's why it's a string. You can put spaces, you can put special characters, and so on. It's a way to sort of
Okay.
hide things by making a symbol that's hard to type.
That's a useful thing. So let's continue. If we want, there's an example of a primitive module using both form. We see here the include. Include is another form that is in Gambit, which allows including a file into the code. It's work like the include in C. It's work the same way, similarly. A stack module, we can see the stack module like we can represent it like a cloud, where the inner functionality are in the middle and the public API on the border of the cloud. This can be conceptually be represented like this. So this in Scheme is written with two files. We have the header file, which specify which symbol are exported. We see in the header file only empty pop and push are specified here. In the stack.scm we have the supply module, which tells that the module register when loaded, this module is loaded is stack. This means that it will save the stack module into the load cache, the registered module. The namespace, which means that everything after will be in the stack sharp. We have an include to Gambit, which contains another namespace, which remap all symbol in Gambit to the global namespace, mean define, cons, coder. Without this include, we wouldn't have access to define, coder, cons. This include is really important. The third include is can be redundant because it only tells that empty push pop are in the stack namespace, which is already specified with this. However, it can be can actually be renamed. So we could say that these are defined in a different namespace than the stack sharp. This is actually useful. This gives freedom on the namespace of the exported symbol and the internal symbol. Any question about that? Oh, and in this we have also the namespace export everything to stack sharp empty, stack sharp push, stack sharp pop, etc. So there's an example usage of a stack. We have an import statement which will import the stack module. Then we can use the stack module there directly, call empty to create an empty stack, push, and pop. You can notice that there's no path used in there, so the module system will guarantee to find the stack module in its search path. The import expand to an include of the stack sharp.scm and a daemon module to the stack to stcop. The sum path is actually the path given by the when the import will be expanded. The search algorithm will find where the stack sharp is and put the path automatically. So, because the basic module, the primitive module is cool, it's amazing, but we want something more portable between the different implementation of a scheme, something that is more standard. So we actually add the define library form to Gambit to implement a module, a higher level module. This form use this syntax, which is quite simple. You have define library, the library name, and some library definition which contain import, export, begin, and some kind of include, and cond expand to have a conditional expansion of the library. The export syntax allow exporting identifier. You can rename the exported identifier and also export the identifier itself. The import allow importing a library, a subset of the library, and also import a subset specifying which symbol are reject. For example, import some libraries except that symbol. Rename the symbol imported into the library. There's an example of define library. Define library, as you see, contains the name of the library, some import. In that case, the import contains scheme base and scheme write, which give access to display, define, and maybe new line outside of the screen. And this the important thing is this define library that export I and salut. And this library, the part of the define library is it's written only over the it uses the it's translated to the primitive module directly, so it's written over the primitive module. It uses the supply module namespace, which is generated automatically by the module system. You can see there an example of module ref, which use a host name because it's unique. If you go there, you can see an example of the hello module. It contains.
If this is an expansion of what we had on the previous page, how does it know that I and salute are to be exported?
How does it know that it has to be exported? This is the expansion of the library itself.
Yes.
The part this won't tell what is export, what is export. The only thing, the thing is when an import is done on a defined library, the import will scan the file and find the defined library, and it will see that there is an export I and salut, and then the import will expand into a namespace telling that I and salut are in the namespace of the library.
Okay.
It will be a namespace like this with I and salut at import.
I think there's something missing in your slide.
Yes, I think.
Because there's an import of Gambit.
Is there an import of Gambit?
Well,
No.
it's not of Gambit, but I mean scheme based, and
Yeah.
so there's something missing because define would be in the namespace hello sharp.
Oh, that's right. I think there's some. Actually, in that slide, there should be a namespace of that tells that define and are in the global namespace.
So it's just a sharp namespace with the empty namespace, and then define, display, and that's it, I think.
Actually, I could show it later.
But anyway, there's something missing.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't saw that when I wrote the slide.
That answers my question.
Yes. Because there should be two namespace after,
Yeah.
but they are
And
missing.
the point is that exclaim, hi, and salut are all in that hello sharp namespace.
But define is not. And there's a good point here, because if the import of scheme base and scheme right weren't there, the library would compile to this, translate to this, and this defines no procedure, because github.com Gambit hello sharp define is not a special form of in Gambit in scheme. So it will only result in invalid procedure call.
Okay.
So the import of scheme base is really important in that case. And there is where the module can be found on the Gambit repository hello, the hello repository in the Gambit namespace. The RSet RS module, we actually add some extension to this, some declaration, additional declaration. The declaration that were added were the namespace, some native compiler option, and also native library option. The namespace overwrite the namespace of the library. The native compiler option allow passing custom compiler option, which is platform specific, and also compiler specific. So if Gambit is compiled with another compiler like Visual Studio, this may change what the flags are.
So can you have a convex span in this format someplace?
I think we could have a connect span, yes, but I don't think there's a way to determine which compiler was used, which Gambit is compiled.
You're correct, but you can wrap it in a convex span, and you can find a way to redefine whatever symbol you want to associate with Windows versus something else, and then have the convex span depend on that. So it's what you want to do is possible.
Yes. The native library option have a pkg config and pkg config path, which use the pkg program to find the library name and add the correct argument to the correct compiler option automatically. For example, for the namespace, actually, if we start with the namespace, this is what the namespace is used for. The namespace declaration is used to implement some library, standard library that are already implemented in Gambit. The namespace only tells that remap the current Giphy, current second, and Giphy per second, which are built into Gambit, to the namespace, the empty namespace. The part of this library is a special case which actually compiled to nothing. It does nothing more than only telling the module system that these are Gambit procedure directly. There's an example about we could write SDL2 library. We have the export, which contain all the symbol, all the procedure need to in SDL. Some option. There's I put the -03. We want maximum optimization on this library, and why not link with OpenGL? Because I think SDL2 has support for OpenGL procedure in somewhere. And if we want to link with SDL, we can also specify it with pkg config. This will tell the compiler to compile this code and link with SDL2. This adds an additional search path for the pkg config. And there's at the end, yes.
Isn't it bad practice to have the path in the module itself rather than some configuration file outside the module? Because now when you move it to a different machine, you need to modify the source instead of the configuration file.
If you place a config file that doesn't exist on a specific machine, PKG config would ignore it. It ignores the path that doesn't lead to anything, to something on the machine. But putting a PKG config path to a local path may not be the best practice, but it's actually it's available in the system.
Let me add to that, because I think it's a very good point, and it's a question of how to design libraries, and your idea of having a separate configuration approach, a file or something like that, separate from the library, is one way to go. But there's something to be said to centralize everything in the same file, right? And Gambit tries to be as portable as possible, or to favor portability. And this idea of putting everything in a single file has that advantage to keep some kind of history of what it is needed to actually get this thing to work. So using PKG config is probably the best approach, because it gives you access to a kind of a database of compile options and so on that are associated with these system libraries. Thankfully, PKG config actually ignores search paths that don't exist or don't make any sense. So adding them in the library definition doesn't hurt. And it can become a kind of way of saying, well, if you're on Mac OS, you should use this. If you're on some other system, you should use that. If it actually does cause some kind of conflict, you can always wrap it in a cond expand to really limit the scope of your declaration. But I think, well, we don't have much experience with it, because this was actually has been working for, I think, about 7 days or something like that. So absolutely no experience with it. So we'll have to see if it works out. But I'm really interested in knowing if it works out for you. The other options, the CC options and LD options, are really much lower level, and those I think are risky, because your example was good if you're on Microsoft Visual C++ or something like that. Then the options might mean something else. O3 might be some kind of other option. Perhaps for the basic options, there's a similar meaning, but I think you can quickly get into trouble with those. So the best is to have none of these options. If you do need to start using them, then use PKG config, and if that doesn't work, then you start using lower level things. And the more you use low level things, the less portable your library will be.
Yes.
I'd like to make one point about this, because we debated this in the variable module system. So what we did with the CC options and LD option package config, we put them on the build script. So there is separate build script, and when build packages, there is a build.ss that gets involved, and in there you can put your cond expands, and we get primitives for CC options, LD options, and package config. So
And we can use the cond expand right here too. It could be used at this level too, and actually we can put it in a different file, because there's a, when I said there are different kind of include, there's include of the library declaration, so we could put this in a separate file and have an include of the library declaration.
So we debated this also, whether we wanted to have a build script
Yes.
as part of the that goes with the module, and I think it's still possible. I think if
No,
there is a build, or maybe
It was removed because
but it could be re-added.
yes.
But really, we're at the point where we want to experiment with something that is simpler than having a build script, because the problem with a build script is that it starts accumulating all kinds of information that is platform specific, and also I would say that it can become stale very quickly because your operating system, it depends on the operating system version, what has been installed, and so on.
You have the same problem with putting in the module. So, the advantage of the book is you don't pollute the module code with externalities of compiling the module.
Well, we should discuss this, but this is for now. It's more like an experiment. There's also the point that will be made shortly that we also want things to be as automatic as possible because we want to be able to migrate code with no special concerns. And of course, by ignoring things that are real, maybe it's not the best way to solve problems. So, but we want to see how far we can go with just this.
Yeah, the PKG, maybe you said this already, but like the PKG config path, those are different between Unisys and everything. So like this might be on some, sometimes you have like a crappy Linux, which is one thing, right? And then you go into like BSD, which is totally different, and then Mac is something else, and then Windows is its own separate disaster. And then you want to cross compile, right? Which is like even worse, like exponentially worse. And then the O3, like would be, are you making a debug build and so on? Yeah.
So, well, this is really not yet a completely baked idea, but we're also thinking of adding at the head of each of these options a condition in which this option applies. So, for example, to say on Mac OS, then use this option, on Linux, use this option. Problem, of course, is these conditions, how do you express them? Because it might be very complex.
It's better to do it with context bound because you already have a little language to specify.
Yeah.
But you have to worry about which version of Mac OS.
Yeah, I'll let Frédéric continue because he still has a...
Wait, can I just throw in a short kind of story from the jungle? PKG config, one time when that didn't play at all is with Boost. So we wanted to have Gambit, right, which is GCC, not LLVM, on OpenBSD, which is by default LLVM, so we forced it into GCC. And then we need to build Boost ourselves. That took us like weeks, literally weeks, because Boost doesn't do PKG configs. We needed to like spend all this time to circumvent both Boost input dependencies and Boost itself, like away from PKG config. So this again is like all the and that was just just some random input. Yeah.
Of course, ideally, to solve all these problems, everything should be written in Scheme.
Yeah.
So we never have to go out of Scheme.
You don't need that on Gambit on bare metal.
Yeah, that's true.
Why are you actually doing this work?
The idea of this option is to use a native library, for example, OpenGL or SDL, or maybe OpenSSL. In that example, not the best example because it's already not a dependency in Gambit, and it can cause some trouble. I tried it. I can talk about it later.
So you might want to make a 3D graphics module that depends on where it's running. It's OpenGL or WebGL or the old version of OpenGL or yeah.
Okay. So this is an example of a library. I won't show all the code inside SDL2.scm because this is kind of huge. It contains it uses the Gambit FFI, and this is not really interesting in that case. So another thing is module management. The thing is, we want a module to be installed. We can install module with GSI. We can stand Gambit software installer. That's a joke. It's a joke. So the module management, there's a point that will be discussed. The module name, the search order, and the installation and installation. The execution, compilation of module, testing of module, and also updating module. The module name syntax is separated by a section. There are ID1, ID2, ID3. There are two kinds of module ref. There's a module ref to hosted module and module ref to local module. The difference is the first part. The first part, if it contains one dot, this is an hosted module. If it contains no dot, it's a local module. It means github.com is a hosted module, is a domain, so it will, everything under github.com will be a hosted module. And you can also have a GitLab, a Bitbucket, every service you want for the hosted module. And there's also the tag, which specifies which version of the module you want to use. I talked earlier about the search algorithm. The search algorithm uses the search order to find where the library are. It will search in the system library, the user library, and any additional library that is specified on the command line in the runtime option. This allows to place your library everywhere you want and use them without worrying where they are. So the installation of module is can be done with the dash install. If you want to install the hello module from Gambit hello, the earlier example, you just say the interpreter dash install, then the module name. In that case, github.com hello Gambit hello. It will install in the user lib because it's not there's no different place specified. This is the default. If you want to install a specific version, you just add and the version. It will install in user lib 2. And if you want to uninstall the module, just say uninstall and the module will be uninstalled. It will uninstall every version. If you then try to uninstall a module, for example, you try to uninstall the version 1.0 of the module, and you ran this command before, you will get an error message saying the module is not installed. This is how you install an uninstalled module. To execute a module, this is quite simple. You just call the interpreter with the module ref, which in the first example you want to execute Gambit GitHub Gambit hello 0.1. You just pass it and it gives the result hello world. You want to execute the version 2.0, you pass it, and if you recall in the last slide, there was no install of the module 2.0. It will auto install. The automatic installation is done. It uses a whitelist and install mode. The whitelist specifies which domain or where the module can be installed automatically, and the install mode specifies whether or not ask the user to install the module. In that case, github.com Gambit is in the whitelist, so there's no prompt to the user. It will only install and run it. If you want to build a module, you can do so by calling the compiler with the module ref. It will compile. You want to execute the compile version, the same as before. It will run the compile version. If you want to execute a module, for example, a local module, hello in a that is in a mylib, you can use you can add a search path, and it will add the search path automatically to the search path, and then you have the module name. So it will execute hello. And you can also add the current working directory to the search order. And it can also run hello from the yes.
So for the automatic install, what's the default?
The default
Prevent any automatic install?
it prevents the installation of a module that is not in the whitelist.
But what's the whitelist?
The
Red.
whitelist is only a list of domain or module prefix.
What is the default?
The default value is an
The
empty,
default
empty list?
value is GitHub Gambit, a list containing GitHub Gambit.
Can it be empty?
You can empty it easily with the runtime option. You can specify I want no element in the whitelist. The whitelist and the install mode can be changed using the runtime option, the Gambit runtime option. I can show you that after. This is easy. The installation and uninstallation also work on local repository. This means any folder that contains a Git folder can be installed as a module. In that example, there's an installation of the module B, which contains a Git folder. And if we can, after having installed the B module, we can install a version of the B module, which is this is a tag that was created in the B module Git repo, local Git repo. If we want to uninstall the local module, you do it the same way. And this is for the installation and installation. But the testing, what about the testing of module? The testing of module is the same as running a module. You run the sub-module test of the module, and this will execute the unit test. You can do the same. There's an example with some module test for the Hello module version 2.1. The test is written can be written using the test module, the built-in test module in Gambit, which defines some macro to check equality and check the true value. This is some framework to simplify writing tests. There's an example of the Hello test module, some module. It includes the test. It includes the test module, the Gambit test module, and also include the Gambit runtime system, all the function, and it contains some tests to test equality. If there's a telcall exception, there's some important import here. There's an import containing ... This is a relative import to the module ref. The module ref of this module is GitHub Gambit Hello test. This import only tells to import the Hello module, actually the main module from the submodule. This is how to import the main module. This is a reference. This preserves the version of the modules. So the version can be anything. This file will work. Any question? Okay. And there's the update. The update is used to update the cache, the local cache of the module, because it's used Git for the revision of the module. Git update, GSC update is the same as Git pull from the local repository that is cached inside. But this could change in the future. just update the module. It work on both hosted module and local module. And the demo, there's we can show the demo of hello. And so using this and the hello module that was used in the presentation, we can actually execute it, show it to show that it's not fake, it worked. Because
Do it.
yes, so if we want to load the main module, actually loading the test, we want to execute it. The module test, and just to be sure, was it installed, or just to show that there is no Gambit module, I think I will just change the. Okay, I will start with a fresh install. If I want to change where the user lib are, I can do user lib and then put some other user lib. So all the modules that will be used will be in this folder. So let's start with hello. This installed the module. I can. Why is it? Okay. Okay. So this has installed the module inside the user lib that was specified here. I can show it if I do tree of user lib. This is what was built that was installed. This is the structure. You have GitHub, Gambit, hello, and this is the cache. If you want to install a specific version, for example 2.0, 2.1, or both work, I do this, and then you have the version 2.0 installed, and you can see in the user lib. There's now the module 2.0. So this is how the module actually it installs automatically the version. The cache is used actually. It allows to install module without using internet at some time. So because it actually clone the repo and use it locally, and if it doesn't find the version, it will update the cache.
What's the motivation for putting this inside CSI and not having a separate package manager?
What do you mean?
I mean, for instance, in Java, we have package manager, which is a separate binary that actually handles the installation of packets and everything. What's the motivation for putting it inside GSI?
The motivation is simply having automatic installation, because if you want to have a module that imports having the dependency install themselves on demand as they are imported, so you can actually have the module the program grow automatically without having only a different command to install them. And
No, but the question was why not create a separate program called
a different
GSP,
program.
like Gambit Package Manager, instead of you reusing GSI, which already
Yeah,
does
so-
this.
This sounds flow to the
Yeah.
interpreter.
Yeah, exactly.
This way? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
But we're curious
okay.
why you're reusing GSI, which is already
Because,
the interpreter, might make it
the-
more complex.
The namespace of programs on any system is limited, and already there's like GSC, which has conflicts with PostScript and so on. So adding, I don't know, GSP or package manager or something, I'm sure it's used by some other systems. So now that we have GSI and it's sort of a precious name, we have options off of that. But in terms of implementation, when you say GSI-install, it actually imports just at that moment the PKG package so that all of the logic of the install and all that
Yes.
is actually offloaded to
Yes.
a module. So it's not actually built into GSI. It's actually a separate thing.
Yes.
So we're not loading the interpreter.
No, the interpreter is not loaded.
Yes. This means I can show that the module, if we look at the register, this is too big.
Just,
I wanted to show that.
well, you can use a small font, I think, for this.
Yes, I will just make it smaller. Okay, this will
I
work.
don't know what's happening to the screen. It's always
Off somehow. Okay. You can see that all the modules that are loaded in Gambit doesn't refer to any package module. If I try to import something that the idea is, for example, if we want to import Gambit Hello, did I start it with okay 2.0? Will it work? I'm not sure if it did.
The other canvas.
This is what I wanted. Okay, 2.1. So 2.1 was not installed in this directory. The thing is having this module automatically installed, and when it's installed, this is only then we have the PKG module loaded into Gambit. The PKG module is only loaded when needed. So if you install all the dependency, it will never use the PKG module. Okay, what's the problem with this? Oh, Control L on Gambit actually erased the prompt. Okay, so that's for the hello example. We can have a more interesting example with there's an we can use this to run some graphical program that is not already installed. For example,
lowercase.
if we want to use
Lowercase.
yes, that's really important. If we want to run an xlib demo, which use xlib, we can run it. It will compile, and we can show that there's multiple window open. The program creates two X window which contains ball. What this example show is it can install a module and compile it automatically, but it compiled because there's a file that's saying Gambit, this module must be compiled.
Can you show a tree?
Yes, I can show the tree if you want. There is the xlib module. The xlib module contain. Do you want it bigger? Or okay, the xlib module contains demo SCM and the xlib library, and also xlib underscore must build, which is a file that contains nothing, just tells Gambit that this module cannot be run without being compiled because it contains DFFI code that is not supported by the interpreter. Yes?
What would happen if, for example, xlib depends on LO version 2.1? And like, would it install lib and then when trying to compile lib, realize that it needs version 2.1 and then like recursively download and compile all the dependencies for that module?
This can happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can have an install chain. Actually, I experiment with that building the last demo. Actually, the one that will use this little piece of hardware. So this is how we can run actually library that must be compiled. The last thing I will use for the part, just to explain, I decide to use this SSH that is on this Raspberry, because it's easier to read than the little font that appear here. So it runs on the Raspberry. I can show that this is a different IP than.
We believe you.
Yes, this actually this not clear. So I first start by adding some thing to the environment. This script, this little script defines Gambit with add the github.com, which is the name of my space on GitHub. Because it's not default in Gambit, I need to add this to the Gambit runtime. Then I also need nothing else, I think. And just to show you that there's no library installed on this system, the only thing that is there is the user lib is empty, so it does not contain the library that will be used by the application. The application which is defined by this. This only an import of termite and a module, this termite clock, and it creates it simply creates a clock app that display the current time. So let's run it. Let's run this application. I run this clock app. So the first thing that happens is it downloads, and it may compile the termite clock, which contains the must build file. It will compile it, and it gives the time using the GMT time global. Is the time correct? The time may not be correct because the Raspberry doesn't have a real-time clock. So close that. And on my local machine, on the left, I will do something. Let's change the time zone of the clock on the right. So if I just get it bigger so it's visible. This is a clock. So let's change the time zone. So I execute. The sign over there. I execute update time zone. And what time zone you want it to be?
-5.
-5. Okay. Let's put it -5. Oh, we have -5. So what happened in that the update time is simple. The code of update time only does. I think I need to get it smaller. What it does is it only sends to the clock app the service named clock app on the Raspberry a number that is an integer which will be interpreted by the server to change the time zone. So this is not code migration yet. This is only a small example to show that I can change what the server does and not does, may actually change data on the server dynamically. The next thing is let's put the time zone at something that will put one at an hour that use only one digit. So
-9.
minus
9.
9. Oh. It won't work if I use cat instead of this. Okay, 9. Oh, there's a little issue. You can see that now it's
Didn't clear the
8
floor.
o'clock and there's 1:44 minutes in 1 hour. So, there's a little problem. Let's solve this. So to solve this, why
Is
not
this the
just...
flavor of the Y2K bug? Just joking.
So, if we want to update this, why not let the application run another version so we don't restart the application, we don't want to. So, let's run something that will just change the behavior of the clock. Did I local n? Did I forget this? Okay, on my local, okay, the script I run is the same as on the server. I just added the GitHub Frédéric to Amel to the whitelist. I did forget that earlier, so I did forget that. Okay, so now we see the install mode. Actually, this is the install mode that was changed. The install mode is now ask always. So it will ask me for every module that it needs to download. So now it wants to download the version 2.0 of Termite Club, version 2. So I say yes. Now it's done, and it did send a closure to this the Raspberry Pi, which you can see now has no bug. There's no more the bug that was there a second ago now is gone, and we did not restart the application. But what if we want this Club app to work and show something on this little screen? Okay, so I know what's the display of the screen. So let's do this. The display I know is that it run on display 0. So I set the display 0 and run this script to update to graphic. On display 0, this means it will send the information to this there.
Excuse me, on what are you running, the left-hand side? It's on your local computer, or?
Yes, it's on local computer.
So why does the display matter?
The display matter because the SSH, actually the SSH is run on the SSH. Actually, the SSH doesn't have a display, so it needs to actually specify this information. So I really don't understand why this did work earlier. Actually. So it asks for some module to install, as earlier. It installed one module that I named Funny Segment Fun, because I will make it work on this. And it used the version 3 of the clock. So I installed it too. It's installed on the local machine, and now it will migrate to the Club app. It should show in a few seconds, or is it about to show?
So the Termite Clock version 3 is not installed on the Raspberry Pi, and by migrating the code, it's going to see that it doesn't have the library installed locally, so it's going to pull all of the dependencies and then finally execute.
That's the point of this demo, but
I
there
think
seems to be a network problem.
is there a network problem? Oh yes, there's a network problem. Like right now, I don't have access to. Oh, actually, I know the problem is that I should have run. There's no network problem. The problem is the display should have been put right there, not on the other.
That's why I couldn't understand what
This is why it worked earlier. I did so. I set the display 0 to this one. Now I understand why this worked. So I restart the clock app. This is the clock app as before. There's no more stuff running. So if I update to the console clock, if I do this, just do it fast. Again, just do it fast. So there's the bug. If we fast forward the clock,
Still on Cat.
I don't like this. Okay. What was the update? Console clock. I fixed the problem easily. Then where we were is
Remove the display
yes, the display. Actually, the display should have been put on the recipe instead of the.
Okay.
So the module were installed, and this should show the time right now.
Okay. And as you see, it's all automatic and completely transparent. No human interaction.
Actually, the part that it's migrating graphical interface, this is not the easy part because there's some tweaking. Yes?
So let's say this is a BPS,
Yes.
and I don't want it to download from GitHub. Like I have some firewall rules, whatever, and I can only talk to it from my computer. How can it get the new code? Or are you sending the libraries with it, or just the closure?
Well, so in this model, everything is centralized on GitHub in this particular case. So everyone needs to be able to talk to GitHub.
But you can have your own local
Yes.
repository or your own.
Yeah,
You could also host your own server, such as GitHub. Not GitHub, but you could run a little GitLab server on your machine, and use that server to transfer the code on the other machine.
So every machine pulls from this.
Yeah.
So if you have the local server on your machine, everything will pull from your machine.
But there's no peer-to-peer included in.
There's not, but that could be an extension,
Yes.
an interesting extension to do that.
It requires some work that is not done yet. The peer-to-peer, and it requires a certain protocol to transfer the code. So this is the interesting part is this is ARM and this is x86. So this works.
So actually, the module was migrated. I mean, the program was migrated, okay, and it was running compiled on the x86, and then it's running compiled on the ARM. It's the same module, just compiled differently on two different architectures. And because of the transparency of the host independence of the serialization, it really doesn't matter, which specific platform you're running on.
There is the termite clock. It's compiled, and if we look at the executable type, for example, it's Gambit termite clock O. What it says is it's ARM EAVI 5 version 6V, so it's compiled on the ARM system.
If the system supported peer-to-peer like sharing of modules, I imagine that you could just share build artifacts.
Built artifact.
As long as the platforms are of the same
Yes.
type.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that would be another interesting thing to explore.
Yeah, of course, that path leads to
Other issue.
what if you have exactly the same platform, but it's just this library is slightly different, and then everything breaks. So by recompiling from source, you sort of
So basically,
iron out those problems.
when you migrate the code, did you migrate the source code to the module as well?
So the source code is on GitHub in this particular example.
So you
So
give
it
it
just
reference to GitHub and you pull from GitHub and compile.
actually, this is sort of like explaining a magic trick, right? Because it's there are many things involved, but something that you didn't see is that the code that was migrated contains a reference to the module because it's in the namespace. So the namespace actually contains github.com, etc. The namespace, the stuff before the sharp sign, tells the system where the module is living. So when it's is transferred and it starts running at the other end, it gets an undefined reference to this variable that isn't defined. And I think you showed it.
Maybe not.
We installed a undefined reference handler that detects this, sees that the variable is actually referencing a hosted module, downloads the hosted module, tries the reference again, sees that now it's defined, and keeps on going.
Here's the
Yes,
code
but
that
the-
do the magic. The magic is done with this little piece of code. This code is linked with the serialization procedure. If the procedure is not found on the system, it go and fetch it. So it would be possible to expand this procedure to allow installing from peer-to-peer, I think.
What's the point? Is this about like lazy loading or procedures on a remote computer? No.
Actually, it's
Well, that's what this will do.
yes.
Yeah.
There are security implications
Oh, definitely.
there. What? Security implications.
The security, actually, I thought about security is we can use the communication between each computer or machine can be secure with a SSH tunnel. So you could send the data through the SSH tunnel and it will be encrypted.
You could also sign modules. There are various things that can be done, and I should say it's completely doable. It just hasn't been implemented.
In GitHub we trust.
Yeah, for the moment it's in GitHub with We Trust and also the whitelist.
Yeah.
You have to be very careful, of course, not to put things that you don't trust.
Well,
And by default, github.com/Gambit is trusted.
Maybe it's basically empty.
Yeah,
Like
I
the
want-
world is a crazy place. TLS is broken. Like tell me something that's secure, right?
You could take
Bitcoin, maybe.
the
Partially.
We can argue that security by saying everything is bad is a danger. It's not a good way to say security.
So one thing you should also be if
Ah.
your servers and you're updating on the fly, you're really going to have an audit trail of what happened because you can end in nightmare scenarios having your servers running and you don't know where they're running. So if you get an audit trail somewhere, that would be nice.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, secure by default is good. So like have like the promiscuous button, promiscuous security, right, where you can like press that red button right every time you don't want to go into the unsecure world.
And there can be a way to actually, if you want the server to actually reset, there could be a way to write your code. So there's a hook that can reset the server to a previous version, whatever the code of the server was. Because now I updated the old code of the node and the terminate node that ran here, that still run. But if I did update only a part of the code, so that I can still change the procedure inside it, I could do that too.
Content hashes can be sometimes can be nice.
So you have to understand that to get to a module, you actually have to say it on the command line. So the thing about github.com/Gambit, it being dangerous to be on the whitelist, you have any way to name that module on the command line to actually run it. So in a certain sense, you know what you're doing, and if you're doing this with some URL that shouldn't be trusted, then just don't type that in.
I have a question.
If I do this, oh, that's not
In fact, when you use Git, you know, if you say Git clone and then you put a URL that has, you know, that has code in it, how come you trust that, but you don't trust GSI with the same
We
basically
trust
command?
inside. The problem is that, you know, like all crazy stuff, you know, it happens.
Yeah.
It's the unknown
Yeah,
exception.
I don't trust Git. Yeah, I don't trust the Git clone also.
The handler that you showed that actually detects if there's a library downloaded from Git, is that
It's
now in the default install?
no,
or
that's something that you have to write
that's
yourself.
per module, so you have to set it
Yes.
yourself every time you want to use it.
Right now,
So it might make its way into Termite, but we're not there yet.
yes.
And,
But if you have to set it explicitly, then that might be better, because then you know that you can rely on
Mhm.
nothing being installed. If the expression is not found, then it's doesn't have to switch on GitHub.
Yeah, I have a question. Just like the previous screen, you had on line 5, you had something saying something like unresolved procedure handler set.
that's what we were just
Ah,
talking
yes,
about.
this
Right.
is.
So is that when the code is trying to use a symbol that doesn't have any correspondent in the global namespace?
It's
to
when
fill it out?
you deserialize, so it's when you use U8 vector to object, and you're deserializing a sub-procedure that doesn't exist, and whose name actually starts with a hosted, you know, the domain name and so on, and then it will load the module so that we'll download it, compile it, and so on. Yeah.
More like a silly question. So doesn't this restrict the namespace to not contain dots because they're resolved by the
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can module namespaces now contain dots, or will they be resolved as URLs?
So when the command line, if you write something that looks like a hosted name, but it can't find the module, it will actually search through the file system. Well, it will use that as a path on the file system.
So in the order be reversed, first search the local file system and then go to the web.
So no, it goes through the. It tries to parse it as a hosted module name, module, what we call a module ref, and if it doesn't parse, sorry, it will parse as that, but it doesn't find it in the module cache. So then it will try to use it as a file.
Okay. Yeah, that's a little weird.
Well, what would you do?
Now that's an artifact of having GSI actually handle this. So if you get a separate program, you wouldn't get this problem because now you're installing the hosting directly. But if GSI is parsing the names and it's looking for hosted, and if you happen to get a directory in your phone, you have github.com,
Yeah.
you have a local cache.
But my view is that we should move away from files and closer to modules. So it's better to have the idea that what you're typing on the command line is actually modules. And if your module is actually at a specific place in the file system, then you add that to the search order, which is just, I think you had an example of that, but it requires you to add one space on the command line because it's really the directory that contains your module with a slash, then a space, and then the name of the module.
Yeah, the slash.
The slash can't be a file, can't be a module ref either. So it's known to be a location that is added to the search order.
And
Did you show an example of that?
the example of adding a path, I don't think I have one.
No, I think it was in your presentation. but
Yes, it
that's
was
okay.
my presentation. And I think it's actually the option. Now there is this in Gambit. If you which is actually the Gambit help, which contains everything about the search, the whitelist, and ask install. So you can add search path using this syntax, and also add to whitelist using whitelist. If you want to empty the whitelist,
But I think the information an interesting information is also on the top of that.
yes,
So,
yes, there's a
no, it's when you do dash help,
dash
GSI
help.
dash help, no dash help.
Oh. And the dash help.
This is also something that's new. There's a requested option. So you see, you can say dot, which will use the current working directory. We'll add that to the module search order, or a directory ending with a slash.
For example, module search order. Module search order. There's the module search order, contain a dot. So if I want to add more to the search order, I can say, for example, user.lib
Slash.
Wait, can all of this package management stuff be disabled and just go with a normal compile file, load?
Oh yeah, that still exists, just like before.
So you can compile a file still. I want to compile this. Oh, this. That's it.
You have to put it in your, because you had a different search order before.
Yes. And you see there, it fails to find this library because it's searched in my default user lib. And I don't have this in the whitelist, so it won't install it automatically. In that case, it fails to install it. So the installation will result in a cannot find library because the library doesn't exist. So this actually, if you don't trust the domain, it gives only a cannot find library as a result. So this is. So any question? Any more question?